And good morning, everyone. Happy Tuesday morning to you, and welcome back. Now, I'm filming this on Sunday morning, as I did yesterday, uh, and I'm sitting here in my studio, and I've got to tell you, I'm just reveling in the sound that is on my roof. I doubt you can hear it, but anyway, we are finally getting a really badly needed rain. Boy, I tell you what, it has been pardon me, it has been ultra dry around here. Right across the road from me and just down, there's a pond there. And yesterday, before the rain started, uh, I had two catfish and a bass knock on my front door asking for a cup of water. Yeah, really. That's how dry it's been. uh, there's a reason that I don't have a career in comedy, right? Okay, whatever. So, uh, it really is great to sit here and to listen to the sound of rain on a roof. Probably when I get through filming, and I'll film Wednesday's video here after I'm through with this one, I'm probably going to grab my cup of coffee, walk out on the porch of my office, and just stand there and listen to the rain come down. I really like to do that. I don't. To me, there's something so smooth, soothing to stand on a porch, under a carport, whatever, and just listen to the rain. And I like storms. I love to listen to the thunder, long as it's not too close. But that to me is just, number one, I marvel at nature. I marvel at God's creation, and it just does the soul good for me to stand out and to watch the rain, watch the clouds, etc., etc. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do here in a little bit. All right. So anyway, here we are. This video will show on Tuesday. I want to continue today with what we began yesterday, and that is that Sukkot in ancient Israel was known as the time of the coronation coronation of the king. Now, this went back all the way to the time of Solomon. Solomon built his temple, that magnificent, boy, would you not have loved to have seen Solomon's temple or the Herodian temple? I really don't know which one of them would have been the most magnificent, but to have seen either one of them in their full glory. You know, the rabbis used to say, the ancient rabbis, he who has never seen the temple in its glory has never seen a beautiful thing. You know, you got all of this white marble, you got the cedar, you've got the gold. And when the sun would hit that, it was said to be like a mountain of snow capped with gold. Yeah, must have been awesome. Sorry for the digression, but I've just always felt that to be able to see that ancient temple would have been absolutely amazing. Even the Roman historian Tacitus said that people traveled from all over the world just to see the temple. Um, well, I'll just stop there. Okay. Because I really do like to talk about that. So, in 1 Kings chapter 8, we have the record, and I'm going to turn over there because I give the entire text in my book. Oh, said I did. No, I didn't. All right, I apologize for that. But in 1 Kings chapter 8, at the dedication of the temple, guess what? At the dedication of the temple, it was done on Sukkot. So this is not the direct coronation of the king, but it is an extremely point of time in Israel's history. Sukkot was the dedication of the temple of God. Now, I suggested to you yesterday that in my book I said that the temple, or excuse me, Sukkot, was a celebration of, an observance of the coronation of the king. Well, since writing the book and doing more study, I've come to the conclusion that that's only partially right. Okay? And by the way, this is one of the problems with writing a book, because you write a book and you write what you think is absolutely accurate at the time you write it. And the more you study, you begin to go, wait a minute. That may not be true. I'm going to take a different view of that. And a minister that I once knew, I didn't know him real well, but he was a very, very scholarly guy, wrote some wonderful books. But somebody asked him about writing a book. He said, there's a problem. There's a problem with writing books. When you put your thoughts and your convictions down on paper, you might change your mind, but you feel compelled to defend what you once wrote. I understand that perspective now to a certain extent, because in my very first book on 2 Peter chapter 3, I said some things and I said them confidently. I said them with full assurance that it was right. Well, guess what? I studied more and I realized I was flat dead wrong. So in my later edition and my revision of that book, guess what? I told the readers, here's what I said in my original book. Here's the position I take now. I was wrong. I did not read the text properly. I don't have any problem doing that. You know, I'm not afraid to be wrong, in spite of what some people say. So, I believe now, all right, I believe now that Sukkot, rather than speak of the initiation of the reign of the king, it was in fact the revelation, the manifestation, the glorification, and let me add this, the consolidation, and I think this is critical, of the rule of the king. Let me go back to Luke chapter 19 that I shared with you yesterday. The Pharisees believed that Jesus was to immediately establish the kingdom. So he told the parable and he said, a certain nobleman went into a far country there to receive the kingdom. Well, that meant technically, the nobleman was going into a far country to be coronated. And then Jesus said, and to return. So what would the king do when he returned? Well, keep in mind, he's already king. He's already sovereign. He is not a sovereign. He's not a king in potentia. No, he was fully a king when coronated in the far country. He was already ruling. He could have sent out letters, for instance. He could have sent epistles, directives from the far country. This is all part of history. Well known, well understood, well accepted ancient history. Okay? So we have the king going away to be coronated. But what would he do? Well, while he was gone, some of his citizens said, we will not have this man to rule over you. In other words, he's got a rebellion on his hands. His citizens are going, no. By the way, does this not remind us of when Jesus was on trial? Now, I understand he had not yet left. I understand he had not yet ascended. But the sentiment expressed that day was the sentiment that Jesus expressed concerning the king in Luke chapter 19. We will not have this man to rule over us. So here's Jesus on trial. And Pilate says, behold your king. And they said, we have no king but Caesar. What were they saying? We will not have this man to rule over us. He is not our king. That's precisely what they were saying. And again, I fully understand Jesus had not yet ascended. But Pilate asked him, "Are you the king of the Jews?" And Jesus said, "You have rightly said." Yeah, for this reason was I born. For this reason I came into this world. To do what? To be king. So, as I pointed out yesterday, what we find in Acts chapter 2 is the recounting of the coronation, the beginning of the reign of Christ on the throne of David. I mean, after all, Acts chapter 13, Paul said that Christ already had, at his resurrection and ascension, received the sure mercies of David. Well, what were the sure mercies of David? It was the kingship, the sovereignty, the kingdom of the throne of David. And Paul said Christ had already received it. So, enrobed in the heaven, coronated in the heavens, but you see, he's got a rebellion on his hand. So what has he got to do? Well, it says he would return. What would he do at his return? He would say, "Bring those men before me who said, we will not have this man to rule over me." And he judged them and he destroyed them. Hint, that's AD 70, as many commentators recognize. Nonetheless, what was he doing by gathering those rebels before him and destroying them? He was consolidating, confirming, completing. I don't even, sometimes I search for the exact proper word to use here. Point of fact is, he was already king. He was now exercising that authority. He wasn't beginning his rule. He wasn't beginning his reign. He was consolidating his sovereignty and his reign by putting his enemies under his feet. Like Psalms 110 says, "Set at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool. Rule thou in the midst of your enemies." Well, when he was on the throne in the heavens, he was ruling in the midst of his enemies. What would he do? He would come back and destroy those men, put them under his feet. "Rule thou in the midst of thy enemies. Sit at my right hand until I make your enemies your footstool." This all agrees perfectly with the ascension, enthronement, and the promise of his coming to judge his rebellious citizens. Now, this is where it gets wonderful, insofar as I'm concerned. What do we find in the book of Revelation, for instance? Well, first of all, let me point out that Matthew chapter 24 and verse 30, Jesus speaking of his coming in the destruction of Jerusalem. Let me point out to you, all millennialists and postmillennialists alike agree AD 70 was the coming of the Lord. They just don't believe it was the coming of the Lord. But Jesus in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 30 says, verse 29, "Immediately after the tribulation of those days, they will see the sign of the Son of Man in the heavens." Well, some ancient commentators said, one of these days we're going to see something up there in the sky. Some commentators, 4th century commentators, said, well, that is what Constantine saw. He saw a cross in the sky. No. The force of the Greek, and by the way, Gary DeMar, Kenneth Gentry, Keith Matheson, and others have taken note of this. The force of the Greek, by the way, even Marius Reeser, who's certainly not a postmillennialist or even a conservative scholar by that definition, said the force of the Greek text means that in the visible events of the fall of Jerusalem, they would see and they would know that Jesus was enthroned in the heavens, and this event, the fall of Jerusalem, was his coming in judgment of his enemies. It was the sure visible sign that he is enthroned as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. It's his manifestation and the confirmation of his sovereignty. That's powerful stuff. Because you see, as even postmillennial partial preterists acknowledge, and partial preterists amillennialists as well, they know that AD 70 was not a literal, visible, bodily, physical coming of Christ out of heaven. They realize and understand that was Jesus exercising his sovereignty and being manifested as King of Kings and Lord of Lords. This is powerful stuff. Now look, I discuss this and a whole lot more in my book, The Resurrection Feast Fulfilled. And don't forget, I'm going to continue our 2-book special for a little bit because we still got orders for the special coming in. So for the rest of this month, November, and here we are, what, 4th, 5th, something like that. Oh yeah, this is get out and vote day, folks. And you'll excuse me, but we really need to vote for somebody who has some respect for human life, some respect for our Constitution, some respect for our military, some respect for our law enforcement people. I'll let you make up your own mind who that might be. Nonetheless, so here we are, the 5th, all the rest of November, 2024 U.S. orders only. Total delivered price, $39.50. If you purchase them separately and paid shipping, it would cost you over $50. So you're going to save over $20. Okay, so tomorrow, on the flip side, we're going to be talking about how Succot, i.e. harvest, segues beautifully into the manifestation, the consolidation of the sovereignty of Christ. So I'll see you on the flip side.